In this video, I'd like to talk about some advanced techniques. One technique I want to focus on is a reverse rolling technique. Reverse rolling is a complicated technique in Dark Souls 3. Basically, you're rolling sort of backwards, like this. I'll show you again. And the idea is to roll directly behind your opponent, but facing your opponent as when you complete your roll. The button combination is a little bit complicated. You have to press 4 buttons sort of in a very close period of time. Well, it's actually 3 buttons plus you have to move the direction of the left analog stick backwards. So the button combination are, first you have to change stance from one-handed to two-handed, and at the same time moving your left analog stick back, and then unlocking by pressing R3 and then rolling at the same time, so the circle button. So it's a little bit complicated. Basically, I like to backpedal, and then I like to initiate a backpedal, change stance with the triangle button, then unlock and roll. So basically, backpedal, press triangle, and then press R3 and circle almost at the same time, after pressing the triangle, of course. So I'll just tell you again. So I like to initiate a backpedal, press triangle, and then press R3 and circle almost at the same time. Sometimes I press the circle a little bit before the R3. It's a very difficult technique to pull off. I find it difficult to pull off consistently, particularly in PvP. In PvE, it's relatively easy because there are less things to think about. You're not concentrating so much on your opponent. You're very familiar with the enemy patterns. But in PvP, I find I can't do it very consistently. The timing for the button combinations are very, very tight. And there's basically 4 buttons you have to press, as I say, in a very close period of time. Okay, there you go. I did it again. There you go. The idea is as you roll, you would face your opponent's back directly if you make the successful reverse roll. Okay, see here, I'm facing my opponent's back. I'll see if I can do it again. There you go. If I did roll behind him and doesn't get stuck, maybe let me try again. Yep, see, if I didn't get stuck, I'll probably be facing behind him. Whilst if I just roll backwards like this, my back will be to his back, so I wouldn't be facing behind him. Now, compared to just locking on and rolling forward, it is slightly, I think it feels like it's slightly faster, because when I recover from the roll, I'll be facing my opponent's back directly. This is a very situational skill in PvP. It's good against dashing attacks, so if you're backpedaling, you know your opponent's going to do a dash attack, you time your reverse roll, so you will be right behind him after he completes his dashing attack. Particularly useful against vertical dashing attacks, like ultra great swords have vertical dash attacks, great hammers as well. Those dashing attacks you can't turn. Because you can't turn during dashing attacks, manual aiming is not useful, and unlocking isn't very useful as well, because you can't turn your attacks once your attack initiates. So it's very easy to get behind opponents which are using vertical running attacks, since running attack cannot be turned once the animation is initiated. So weapons with horizontal running attacks like curved greatswords, you got to be a little bit careful because they can clip you with the edge of their hitbox. Really depends on how you place your rolls, connection latency, etc. Overall, it's a pretty fun technique to do, and it is a fancy technique, and it has very limited use, I find, and it's something I don't recommend in serious PvP because it's not really necessary. It gives you a small amount of advantage. It can be useful in some cases to avoid backstabs, because when you're rolling, the direction which you're facing is the opposite if you were to roll normally. So you can avoid backstabs in certain situations, but in other situations it might get you backstabbed. So as you can see now, I'm behind my opponent, but facing his back, and I didn't have to turn. Okay, there you go again. So you gotta press those buttons very quickly in a very short space of time. If you don't press it quickly enough or in the correct sequence, it will just do a normal roll backwards rather than a reverse roll. There you go again. See if I can do the third time. Okay. As I said, it has some limited use in PvP. It is a pretty cool technique. You can use it for like montages and if you want to show off your friends. And it can also be useful in certain cases in PvE, particularly bosses which charge at you. You can instantly get behind them. Okay, failing there. There we go. Alright, so I hope this has been informative. So I'll give you the button combination again. Basically, I like to backpedal, initiate a backpedal, press circle, initiate a backpedal, press triangle, and then circle and R3 almost at the same time. R3 to unlock, obviously. So backpedal, initiate a backpedal, triangle, then circle, and then unlock almost at the same time. So that's how I normally do it. And basically it's great because sometimes it looks like you're backpedaling, but suddenly you're rolling, moving forwards. And it's good also to confuse your opponent in PvP because they will like, what the hell is this guy doing? So you can play some sort of mind games with them. But it's a very difficult technique to pull off consistently. Even with quite a lot of practice, I can't do it consistently, but I can do it most of the time. I'd say more like 50%. A final point I want to make is that if you want to practice any fancy techniques, it's best to do it in PvE before you do it in PvP. So you can test here. This is in Ariandel Chapel, which is in one of the DLCs, Painted World of Ariandel. It's great because it's very close to the bonfire, and you have enemy here, the Corvian enemy, and he doesn't move. He just sort of sits there, and you can, as long as you don't damage him, you can roll into him without the armor of Thorn, of course. You can practice your techniques with him, different techniques with him, because he doesn't move. Another great thing about him is you can also test the range of your weapon, and you can see, oh, okay, this attack doesn't hit. The only problem with this area is that it's in an incline, which is quite annoying, and also it's very annoying that the snow gives some sort of effect, which I don't like as well. But the incline is useful to see like hitboxes. See, the thrust attack missed him. The range is right, but it just missed him because the hitbox doesn't connect. So it can be useful to test hitboxes and things. So I find overall it's a pretty cool area to test. Another area I like to test is in Archdragon Peak, where we have the Drake Blood Knight. So you can also practice some of your techniques. You can practice different combos on different weapons with him as well. So that's another good place to practice just different types of techniques that you want to do. And always do in PvE first, and then translate that to PvP. Not only you get time to get used to the buttons and the timing of the buttons and different combos, but also it's a great way so you don't make fool out of yourself. You're not looking like someone that trying stupid things. So yeah, in Archdragon Peak, just this straight Blood Knight, and I can test out my reverse roll with him. I can also do damage test with him as well. Okay, let's just kill him so he doesn't kill us. There we go. Yeah, that's another place I like to test. You can also test weapon damages with him as well, which is a pretty cool thing to do. So you can infuse weapons with different type of infusion, or you can see how damage buffs work and how much that translates to an increase in damage. It's not always applicable to PvP, but it does give you some idea. I also do test spacing of weapons with him as well, because he's a quite aggressive enemy, so he will constantly charge at you. So it helps you space weapons against aggressive opponents. Alright, just for one final note is that with the reverse roll, whilst it's a pretty fancy technique, there's two disadvantages I see with it. First of all, obviously the button combination is very complicated because you have to press many buttons in a very short period of time. Unless you're very good with it, it's pretty hard to do consistently. Second thing, what I don't like about it is you have to do the stance change, i.e. this particular type of reverse roll, you have to change stance from one-handed to two-handed, which is quite annoying because certain weapons, the one-handed and two-handed moveset are vastly different. I like greatswords, and greatswords one-handed and two-handed moveset are very different. The one-handed moveset is a swipe, whilst the two-handed moveset is a vertical hit. Now, another problem is that the one-handed moveset has no hyper armor, so the two-handed moveset has hyper armor. So I always have to think, oh, am I one-handing this or two-handing? I'm going to do a reverse roll, I'm one-handing, I'm going to go into two-handing, or I'm two-handing the weapon, I have to go into one-handing. This isn't too big of an issue with certain weapons, like curved greatswords or horizontal ultras, like the Zweinhunter, where one-handed and two-handed R1s are quite similar. Their two-handed movesets are still different, but yeah, you know what I mean. So that's the only two disadvantages with it. It does look pretty cool, and you can use it to confuse your opponents. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something new from this video. And I will show you a couple of clips after this of me using reverse rolls in PvP. And I know a few people already covered this video, I just want to do my own take on it. This isn't a new technique, this is a technique that's been discovered quite a long time ago, but as I said, I just want to do my own take on it. Alright, I hope you learned something, as I said, and good luck with your gameplay.